We are finally back. It's been a while since I've made this style of video because I've been quite busy. But anyway, let's get right into the mess that is the 100 Years' War. So yeah, guess what the cause of this war is? Yet another dynastic dispute. There's quite a lot of these in the Middle Ages in Europe, I've decided. King Louis X of France has now died in 1316, and his son, King John I, dies 5 days later. Louis also had a daughter, Joan of Navarre, but she had disputed heritage as her mother was accused of adultery. As a result of all this, it was Louis's brother Philip who actually ascended to the crown as Philip V of France. But when he died, the crown then passed to his brother, Charles IV. Just to compound problems, Charles IV died as his queen was pregnant, so he could not actually oversee the succession of France. He decreed that if the child was male, he would inherit the kingdom, and if not, then the succession should be left to the nobles. The child was a girl, and this ended the male line of the Capetian dynasty. How could this get any worse? The nearest blood relative of Charles IV was the English king Edward III, and he was the nephew of the recently deceased French King Charles. However, this was through being the son of Charles's sister Isabella. Philip's previous ascension to the throne had set a precedent of not being able to inherit through the female line, and when combined with the fact that the French nobles would rather not be ruled by an English king, the throne passed to Philip, the Count of Valois, who was crowned as Philip VI. Eventually, Edward III did actually accept Philip VI as king, and paid him homage because the King of England at the time held lands in France. But over time, the matter of homage became the sticking point that boiled over into war. Philip claimed that Edward of England was in breach of his duties as a vassal, and therefore revoked the Duchy of Gascony, the last remaining French holdings that the English king still controlled. Edward responded by assuming the title King of France and the French Royal Arms in 1340. In early 1340 as well, Guy of Flanders essentially declared his support for the English King Edward because he paid him homage as the true King of France. This was probably influenced by the economic importance of England to the Low Countries, as English wool made up the majority of the raw goods that entered the manufactories in the Low Countries. Anyways, on the 22nd of June 1340, the English navy sailed to the Zwin estuary, where the French navy assumed defensive positions by the port of Sluis. The English fleet successfully pulled off a feigned withdrawal, before quickly turning around and attacking into the French fleet, with the winds on their side. The French fleet was destroyed almost completely, and the English would dominate the Channel for the rest of the war. The English Channel, that is. The next big event was the death of the Duke of Brittany. This created a succession war where the English and French kings supported different candidates, John of Montfort and Charles of Blois, respectively. It was a grueling campaign which only ended in 1364, when the English-backed John of Montfort took control of the whole duchy. England's next step after the naval battle of Sluis was the 1346 campaign in northern France. Edward landed troops on the Cotentin Peninsula and captured the city of Caen in just a day. This caught the French by surprise, and so the King of France, Philip, raised an army which chased Edward's as he marched north into the Low Countries, and Edward actually just narrowly escaped Philip as he crossed the Somme River. Over time, eventually, Philip managed to force Edward into a pitched battle, and this became the Battle of Crécy. The English longbowmen were incredibly effective against the French knights, and the French king ordered the attack much too early. The French army was defeated, and this became the next large disaster for the French in the conflict. To make matters worse for the French, the Scottish king, who was an ally of France, had recently been captured when fighting the English in northern England, at the Battle of Neville's Cross that same year, 1346. Edward then marched north and took the city of Calais in 1347, establishing a strong English foothold in northern France. There was a short pause after this, while the Black Death devastated both France and England. Approximately half of the French population died, and about 20 to 33% of the English population died as a result of the Black Death, and this meant that England recovered financially a lot more quickly than the French. Edward's son, also named Edward, but also known, much more coolly, as the Black Prince, led a raid into France in 1355, and again in 1356. This resumed hostilities. In the second raid of 1356, the Black Prince was eventually outflanked near Poitiers by the new King of France, John II. The Black Prince then offered peace terms to the French king, but the French king would only accept if the Black Prince surrendered himself. And this was not an option for him, and the 1356 Battle of Poitiers ensued. Once again, pitched battle was a disaster for the French, who were outflanked and cut down. Many nobles, including the king, John himself, were captured by the English. Seizing the opportunity, Edward invaded France again for the third time and crossed the Channel. The state of France was now being run by King John's son Charles, who was acting as a regent while his father was in captivity. Edward wanted to capture Rennes to crown himself there, because this was the traditional city where French kings were crowned. But he was unable to take the city after a protracted siege. He moved then to Paris, but after realizing he couldn't take it after a few skirmishes in the suburbs, he settled on Chartres. As Edward's army encamped outside Chartres, a hailstorm caught them. It was a really devastating hailstorm, causing the deaths of about 1,000 English, and was dubbed Black Monday. This forced Edward to negotiate a peace with the French. The Treaty of Bretigny was ratified in 1360, where the French king would be ransomed, and the English domains in southwestern France would be expanded. Additionally, the English would rescind their claims to the actual French crown, as well as the areas of Normandy, Touraine, Anjou, and Maine. This is the end of today's episode, but it's not the end of the series, so there will be more videos coming in the next few weeks, so subscribe to catch those too, and I'll see you in the next one.